Kuleba and the EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell. Let's listen in.
A year ago, President Putin launched his illegal war against a peaceful neighbor. The facts are clear for all to see. Nobody is attacking Russia. Russia is the aggressor. Ukraine is the victim of aggression. And we are supporting Ukraine's right to self-defense, a right which is enshrined in the UN Charter. It is President Putin who started this imperial war of conquest. It is Putin who keeps escalating the war. He thought he could destroy Ukraine and divide us, but he underestimated the determination of the Ukrainian people to defend their homeland, and he underestimated our unity. 1 year since he launched the Russian invasion, we see no sign that President Putin is preparing for peace. On the contrary, as he made clear today, he is preparing for more war. Russia is launching new offensives, mobilizing more troops, and reaching out to North Korea and Iran. We are also increasingly concerned that China may be planning to provide lethal support for Russia's war. Putin must not win. That would show that aggression works and force is rewarded. It will be dangerous for our own security and for the whole world. So we must sustain and step up our support for Ukraine. We must give Ukraine what they need to win and prevail as a sovereign, independent nation in Europe. I welcome the recent announcements by allies on new tanks, heavy weaponry and training for Ukrainian troops. It is urgent to deliver on all these pledges. This has become a grinding war of attrition, a battle of logistics. And key capabilities must reach Ukraine before Russia can seize the momentum. So Foreign Minister Kuleba, High Representative Borrell and I discussed the need to ramp up production and improve our procurement systems to continue supporting Ukraine. Upon Ukraine's request, we have agreed that NATO should assist Ukraine to develop a procurement system that is effective, transparent and accountable. We have also agreed today to convene a meeting of NATO, EU and Ukrainian procurement experts to see what more we can do together to ensure Ukraine has the weapons it needs. In NATO, we have been working on ramping up production for many months. NATO sets the standards for ammunition and equipment for all allies. We have completed an extraordinary survey of ammunition stockpiles. We met with defense industry last fall and continue to engage with them. And we will increase our targets for ammunition stockpiles through the NATO defense planning process. This will also help give defense industry the long-term demand and contracts they need to invest and produce more. NATO has had joint procurement among allies for many years. I also commend the European Union for their efforts to incentivize greater production. And NATO is prepared to work with the EU on this going forward. We have seen a pattern of Russian aggression over many years. Georgia, 2008, Crimea and Donbass, 2014, and the full-fledged invasion last year. We must make clear that Ukraine's future is within the Euro-Atlantic family. When the war ends, we need to put in place long-term arrangements for Ukraine's security, to ensure that Russia does not continue to chip away at European security and to break the cycle of Russian aggression. So NATO will continue to stand with Ukraine for as long as it takes, and we will continue to work closely with the European Union to support you. Let me conclude with this. I regret today's decision by Russia to suspend its participation in the new START treaty. Over the last years, Russia has violated and walked away from key arms control agreements. With today's decision on New START, the whole arms control architecture has been dismantled. I strongly encourage Russia to reconsider its decision and to respect existing agreements. And with that, I give the floor to you, Dmytro, please.
Thank you. Dear Secretary General, dear Jens, dear High Representative, dear Josep. Today we held the first high-level meeting in this new trilateral format between Ukraine, NATO, and the European Union. I think it was helpful. I think we all agree it was helpful. It was important to address most pressing security needs. I enjoyed sitting down in this trilateral format, and although this is the first meeting that we held in this format, I already begin to regret that it will cease to exist when Ukraine will become members of both NATO and the EU. But between now and then, we agreed to work intensively to answer three questions: how to train most effectively, how to produce and procure weapons and ammunition most effectively, and how to deliver all of this to the battlefield in the most effective manner. We have to be aware of the fact that since February 2022, Ukraine and its closest partners are implementing probably the largest logistical operation since Second World War. And behind big political decisions and statements, there are millions of issues that need to be resolved. And the more coordinated we get, the sooner Ukrainian army will kick off Russian army from the territory of Ukraine, and the sooner peace in Euro-Atlantic space will be restored. This is the reason why we are standing here today. So on trainings, I thanked both the European Union and allies for their training programs. They're very efficient. And of course, I raised the issue of training, launching trainings for Ukrainian pilots. On procurement and on production and procurement, we had a very in-depth discussion on that. Time has come for senior diplomats and officials to get into some details of production and procurement to build the most efficient mechanism. And therefore, as Jens already mentioned, I appreciate that we agreed to establish a working level contact mechanism, focal points to resolve issues related to production of armaments and ammunition, and cooperation between and streamlined cooperation between producers, contractors, and beneficiaries. This is the triangle where things have to be smoothed and streamlined, and then everything will begin to work efficiently. The capacity to produce is there. The capacity to deliver is there. So we need coordination to deliver, and this is what we discussed today. I also asked Jens to schedule the next annual industry forum that NATO holds as soon as possible, to hold it somewhere in spring, to bring together all defense industries, including Ukrainian defense industries, so that they connect, they meet with each other, and they build synergies and cooperation. Finally, yes, and the last point was production and trainings, production, delivery. Deliveries, yes, and logistics, and we dedicated a lot of time to logistics. The Ukraine-EU NATO format will keep working on a regular basis. There are many issues that needs to be explored and resolved. We appreciate that the Secretary General will be working on helping us with building our effective national procurement system. And we will be moving forward with one goal: to end this war as soon as possible with the victory of Ukraine, which is unavoidable. Thank you.
Thank you, Dmytro. Josep, please.
Thank you. Let me start by stressing the historical nature of this meeting. The three of us standing here today, Ukraine, NATO, and the European Union, standing here today for the first time in this constellation of three, it's a clear demonstration of our unity to continue supporting Ukraine, for the purpose of supporting Ukraine. We have done it since day one. Since the first day of the Russian invasion against Ukraine, the European Union and NATO have been standing together, not only in condemning, not only in the worst, in the strongest terms, the Russian aggression, but working together in order to provide Ukraine with the capacity to defend itself. And today we are reaffirmed the unwavering support to Ukrainians' territorial integrity and its right to self-defense. Our resolve has been stronger from the beginning, and we will continue doing so. And I think that today's discussion has been crucial to coordinate, the key word that Kuleba has said, to coordinate, speed up, and increase our support. It is necessary in order to make the rule of law prevail over the rule of the gun, the rule of the force. And it is the only way that Ukraine can win this war, to speed up, to increase, to coordinate better our support. Because we are facing a situation where the war is showing its awful face, with bombing of hospitals, starving entire cities to death. That's what Russia is doing, instead of taking a step towards a ceasefire, which is something that we are asking for. Remember, Russia is a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. Russia is a nuclear power. And in spite of that, it has violated this charter, invading a peaceful neighbor. And in line with the United Nations Charter, Ukraine has the sovereign right to defend itself against this unfounded aggression. And the international community, we have the right to support it. To support the aggressor is not in accordance with the United Nations Charter. To support the aggressed, it is perfectly legitimate. And Ukraine needs all the support we can provide. Starting with weapons and ammunition, they need them more than ever. And we are looking for the ways to accelerate the deliveries from member states and to Ukraine. For that, we have a tool, the European Peace Facility, which has been working since the beginning, since day one. And altogether, member states and the European institutions has provided more than 12 billion worth of weapons and related supplies to Ukraine. We have been launching a great training program that will train about 30,000 Ukrainian soldiers by the end of the year. But it's still not enough. We have to accelerate our military support to Ukraine, today especially ammunition, tomorrow with other kind of arms, in order to fulfill all your needs. And I think this meeting will provide us with a better coordination procedures in order to continue doing that in a united and efficient manner. Thank you.
Okay, we'll start with Interfax Ukraine, lady at the back there. Yes.
Thank you, Anna. Ukrainian news agency Interfax Ukraine, Irina Sommer. Secretary General, what is your assessment of today's Putin threat? How serious they are? If you allow, I will quote, "The more long-range weapons the West gives Kyiv, the further Russia will be forced to push the threat away from itself." High Representative, question for you about speeding up a process to deliver to Ukraine. You said yesterday that decision will be taken by Minister of Defense next week, but Ukraine needs ammunition today, can we expect that a process, I mean, decision-taking process will be speed up? And Minister Kuleba, do you have any information regarding what Chinese peace plan is about? Any details? What can we expect from it? Do you see possibilities that China, from being partner with Russia right now, will become an ally in this war? What kind of consequences it can lead to Ukrainian? Thank you.
What we have seen today is that President Putin is in no way preparing for peace. He's preparing for more war, he's preparing for new offensives, and he is mobilizing more troops and sending in more weapons. And that's exactly why we need to step up our support for Ukraine. Because it will be a tragedy for the Ukrainians, but also dangerous for all of us if President Putin wins in Ukraine. Then we have to remember what this is. This is a war of choice. This is a war of aggression. Russia decides to invade a neighbor, Ukraine. And Ukraine, of course, has the right to defend itself. That's enshrined in the UN Charter. And we, NATO allies, EU members, all of us have the right to provide support to Ukraine. And that's exactly what we are doing. Then, of course, NATO allies, we are providing support to Ukraine, unprecedented support. We step up and deliver more heavier, more advanced weapons, and we have constant consultations with Ukraine on different types of weapons, but also on how to ensure that all the systems, all the weapons which are already there, work as they should. Because we need to remember this is not only about providing new systems, but also ensuring that the artillery, the armor, the air defense systems which have been delivered already have the spare parts, have the ammunition, have the maintenance, have the fuel they need to function. And therefore this is really a battle of logistics, and that's the reason why I also welcome the meeting today, where we focus on how can we ensure that we provide all the supplies and all the support Ukraine needs to defend itself. Then, of course, NATO also has another task, and that is to prevent this war from escalating beyond Ukraine. And that's the reason why we, on the morning of the invasion, activated our defense plans and added thousands of more troops to our presence in the eastern part of the alliance, backed by significant air and naval power, to send a very clear message to Moscow that NATO is there to protect every inch of NATO territory. If one ally is attacked, it will be regarded as an attack on the whole alliance. So we will continue to support Ukraine for as long as it takes, and we will continue to provide credible deterrence and defense for all NATO territory.
Thank you. Well, yesterday we had a Foreign Affairs Council meeting, and we will have defense ministers in some days. It's the beginning of March, it's tomorrow. And after a jumbo meeting putting together defense and foreign affairs ministers. But defense is an issue of the ministers of defense. Defense remains a competence inside the European Union of the member states, and it's up to the defense ministers to take decisions. But we have to prepare these decisions, and we have to act with a sense of urgency. After listening to my colleagues, foreign affairs ministers, yesterday, immediately after, yesterday night, I sent a letter to all defense ministers that we'll be receiving today, asking them to provide ammunition to Ukraine from their stockpiles and from the contracts that they have already passed with the industry, giving Ukraine priority. Because the time parameters of what is happening and what we have to do is measured on weeks, not on months. So first thing to do is to use what we have. Second, to have more. And to have more, we have to procure to the industry. Member states have already done, many of them alone. Doing that together is better. And third, we have to increase the industry capacity, because today the rhythm of using ammunitions is greater than the rhythm of production. So, you know, even if the water goes quicker than it comes in, at the end, it's empty. So we have to increase these three things: procurement methods, industrial capacity, and mobilizing quickly the resources that we already have. This is the purpose of this strategic coordination that takes place, don't forget it, in the framework of a demolishing by Russia of the security system. And today there is a lot of proof of that. Secretary General mentioned Russia's announcement of suspending the START treaty is another proof that what Russia is doing is demolishing the security system that was built after the end of the Cold War. So we have to work on the short term, providing ammunition quickly. It's a matter of weeks, and we have to start thinking about which will be the future security system. But for the time being, let's concentrate on the most urgent issues.
Yes, we had a meeting with the Chinese top diplomat, our former colleague, Foreign Minister, Mr. Wang Yi. He shared with me key elements of the Chinese peace plan. We are looking forward to receiving the text, because this is not something that you can make your conclusions on just after hearing what this plan is about. You need to get into every detail. So once we receive the paper, we will thoroughly examine it and come with our own conclusions. As you know, President Zelensky proposed his peace formula consisting of 10 steps, and we believe that it's a comprehensive, concise, and efficient way forward. So for us, peace formula remains, or the invoking peace formula remains a top priority. When it comes to the Chinese position as such, I think there is one element that is common for Ukraine and China, and it's not just an element, it's a cornerstone, which is the principle of territorial integrity. So everything China has been doing and will be doing in the context of the Russian aggression against Ukraine, if we take the political rhetorics aside and look at actions, should be aimed at defending the principle of territorial integrity. Because if any country of the world helps Russia to destroy territorial integrity of Ukraine, then the principle is undermined, and the message is clear. Anyone else can do that in any other specific situation on the global map,
Al Jazeera.
on the world map.
James Bays from Al Jazeera. Secretary General, on New START, can you tell us how worried should we all be? Does it make the world a more dangerous place now? Foreign Minister, you clearly, as we approach the anniversary, have a lot of unity in the Western countries and here in NATO. But what about beyond the Western countries? What about the rest of the world as we approach a General Assembly vote coming up at the end of the week? What's your message to the rest of the world as we approach this first anniversary? And High Representative, with regard to the Secretary General's comments about being increasingly concerned about China, you've said that you've had assurances this weekend at the Munich Security Conference from State Councillor Wang Yi that they're not going to send more weapons. Have you been shown proof by NATO or the US that there really is a problem here? Thank you.
More nuclear weapons and less arms control makes the world more dangerous. And that's the reason why in NATO we have worked so hard to engage Russia on issues related to arms control, and why NATO allies have supported the New START. And also why I'm calling on Russia today to reconsider its decision to suspend its participation in the New START agreement. We have to remember that this is one of the last major arms control agreements we have. After Russia started to violate the agreement that banned all the intermediate range weapons, the INF Treaty, that led to the demise of that treaty a few years ago. Now they are suspending the other big nuclear arms control treaty, the New START, which put limits on the total number of long-range strategic weapons. So this is just another example that we are moving away from the arms control architecture, the international rules-based order, we have used decades to build, step by step, an agreement by an agreement. So the combination of Russia violating some of these agreements, leading to the demise of the INF Treaty, and then walking away from the New START, makes the world more dangerous and just highlights the importance of that we stand together, all those countries that believe in the rules-based international order and believes in freedom and democracy.
The message, first my message to everyone asking about the global south. I think the picture that the West stands by Ukraine and the rest doesn't is inaccurate. If you look at the results of the latest resolution adopted in October 2022, we got 143 votes. And many countries of the globe of what is called Global South voted in favor of that resolution. So the situation in the Global South is nuanced. It's not black and white. But you're right, more needs to be done to engage with the Global South. And I think that basically this struggle for Global South and support of these countries brought this whole part of the world back to the top of the world agenda in terms of big politics, not only in terms of resources or technical and humanitarian assistance, but in terms of big political game. We have to continue reaching out to the Global South with a very simple message, that it's not about Ukraine. It's about the rules, which also protect you. And if we fail to protect these rules in Ukraine, then you will find yourself in danger. And that's definitely not something that you want to face. I think it's very simple, and I think that the more this war lasts, the more understanding there is.
Yes, about China. Well, I have to confess that I had a good personal relation with the State Councilor Wang Yi since a long time ago, when I was Minister of Foreign Affairs of Spain, and he was Minister of Foreign Affairs of China. And we had a frank conversation in Munich, and he was very, very much clear. I can't repeat his words, that China doesn't provide arms to countries at war. And they are not providing arms to Russia, and they will not provide arms to Russia. That's what he told me, stressing clearly that this is the principle of the foreign affairs policy of China. And by the way, asking me, why do you show concern for me maybe providing arms to Russia when you are providing arms to Ukraine? And I had to explain the big difference. I had to explain what is at stake for us, Europeans, in the war in Ukraine. So that's what China told me. And nevertheless, we have to remain vigilant, but as far as I know, there is not evidence that China has been doing what they claim not to be doing.
Deutsche Welle, NPR.
And if you're just joining us, we've been listening to a joint press conference from NATO headquarters in Brussels, where NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg was speaking together with the EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell and the Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba. Let's bring in DW correspondent Rosie Bierschat, who's been following this press conference at NATO headquarters today. So, Rosie, we heard Jens Stoltenberg talk about how the war between Russia and Ukraine is Russia's war of aggression, and that 1 year on, it is now at a point where it can be called a war of attrition and a battle of logistics. What else did we hear from the NATO Secretary General about this battle of logistics?
Well, as we know, this press conference comes right off the back of President Putin in Russia making a similar big speech. And I think what's clear to me, what stood out there is that these are two kind of parallel universes. On one hand, we have Russia claiming that it sort of was forced to invade Ukraine, although, of course, President Putin wouldn't speak in those terms. And then here in Brussels, a very clear message that this is Russia's war, that Russia is the aggressor. And we even heard High Representative of the European Union, Josep Borrell, saying Moscow is demolishing the security system, with reference to Russia saying it will suspend its participation in a key arms control treaty with the United States. Now, on that question of logistics, this is a big topic here in Brussels and, of course, a bigger one in Ukraine, because the question is when and whether Ukraine will get enough ammunition to keep up its fight, and particularly given the fact that the winter in Europe is thawing out now and Russia is expected to engage in a major offensive in the spring. And with that in mind, NATO Secretary General, and in fact all of those speaking here in Brussels, made it very clear that time is of the essence, that speed could save lives, and that these armaments need to get to Ukraine, and that is particularly on that key question of ammunition. Josep Borrell has said just in the past 24 hours that he thinks that the tank in Ukraine is getting emptier, and that this now is really urgent. And on that, we heard that the EU, NATO and Ukraine will now work together to coordinate more and to help Kyiv develop its own new procurement system when it comes to weapons. And Josep Borrell said he has sent personal letters to the defence ministers of the European Union, asking them in the meantime, while they work on potential plans to jointly procure ammunition for Ukraine, to send the ammunition that they currently have in their own stocks. He said this is becoming very urgent.
That was DW correspondent Rosie Bierschot at NATO headquarters. Rosie, thank you very much. Well, as Rosie talked about, in his State of the Nation address, Russian President Vladimir Putin announced that Russia will suspend its last major nuclear disarmament treaty with the U.S. What is called the New START Treaty went into force back in 2011, and it was not due to